Welcome, everyone. I am Bob Wurzelbacher, the Director of the Respect Life Office for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and this is our video podcast series that we call Being Pro-Life. Each month, we'll discuss a different topic in the Respect Life arena. We'll hear a personal story from someone deeply affected by that issue, and finally, we'll share ways that you can get involved. Now, today's topic is hope and healing after an abortion. As always, we have a special guest with us today. She has asked that we keep her face and name confidential. So for this interview, we'll use the name Elizabeth. Welcome, Elizabeth, to the Being Pro-Life series.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
I'm here to talk to you about two of my best kept secrets that most of my family and friends still do not know. I was your average high school girl. I was a little shy and had a small, close group of friends. I was not interested in any sort of sexual relationship. I was truly saving myself for marriage. And then my senior year, I did meet my first boyfriend. But unfortunately, there was a side that came out of him that truly scared me. And unfortunately, he wanted to have a sexual relationship with me all the time. And I fought him every time. And when I would try to break up with him, he'd stalk me and would find where I was. But one time after work, I was unable to fight him anymore. And he ended up date raping me. And my first year of college, I found out that I was pregnant. So I did confront him to tell him I was pregnant. And he threatened to take the baby away from me or fight me in court to say that I was an unfit mother. He started coming to my parents' house and actually stalking them and my brothers and sisters. So we knew that having the baby and hiding was the best option, and to place the child for adoption, which is what we ended up doing. It was probably the best decision, because after I had returned, after having this child, he showed up at my place of work and was showing up at my house again, to the point where I ended up having to move out of my parents' house and living with two of my sisters to avoid him. It was very hard.
So that was a pregnancy that led to placing a child for adoption.
Yes.
So what happened after that?
After I had the child, I was 18, 19 years old, and my body changed, and I was in an abusive relationship, and I didn't feel so attractive. I hated myself. I lost my scholarship. I really felt that my life was just a mess now. I had no direction. So then I met another man, and he made me feel attractive and made me feel good about myself. And again, another side came out of him. I learned that he was living with somebody. I learned that he was a father of another child through this woman he was living with. And I tried to get out of that relationship. And unfortunately, again, when he wanted to have sex, I didn't even fight it. I just got to the point in my life where I thought that's all men wanted. He was the second guy I'd ever been with. I got pregnant again. I confronted him and said that I was pregnant. He said that he would state the child was not his. It made me just feel really bad about myself. So he said, "You need to have an abortion, and I will give you the money for it." But the day of the appointment, he didn't show up. He had no money. But I still went to the appointment. I didn't think I could place another child for adoption. It was really hard. I connected to that child. When I was at the home for unwed mothers, I prayed the rosary every night for protection over this child. And I prayed to St. Joseph to be the father for this child, and Mary to be the mother for the child. I did Mass every day. And in some ways, I feel like my faith had let me down, because you know what? I wore a scapular every day of my life. And the day that I was date raped, I looked at myself in the mirror with the bruises and my shirt ripped open, and I saw my scapular, and I said, it's probably the day I lost my faith, really lost it. But then I regained it when I went to Mass every day and was praying the rosary and all that stuff. And then I meet this guy, and all this happens, and I just felt like my faith had failed me again. And so I just did not want to go through the humiliation of telling everybody of my family that I was pregnant again. So I did it all in secret. I told the guy, he said he was going to be there for me. He wasn't. And I just went through the motions. I just did it all myself.
So would you like to share a little bit about the experience of that day that you had that abortion?
Well, my family is very, very pro-life. They, even myself when I was younger, had picketed in front of the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic many Saturdays. And I was afraid that my relatives would be there in front of that clinic. And nobody was picketing that day. So it made it easier to go in through the doors. So I gave a false name. And as I was sitting there waiting for the answer of the pregnancy test that they were doing on me, they call my name. The counselor confirms what I already knew and says I have other choices, but never really explains my other choices. But I know what they are because just 2 years earlier, I placed a child for adoption. I tell her this is what I want to do, and off to the waiting room I go. Most abortions are a spontaneous decision. You go to the clinic to find out if you're pregnant, and you just go through the motions and processes. No time to really think about what you're going to do and how it will affect your life. I went back to the waiting room. My name is called again. It is time for the procedure. I start crying and tensing up. The procedure is now done. I have now become totally numb, and most of all, I have become non-existent. I can now leave, but it really isn't me. It's somebody else, because I would never do such a thing. I go through life as if nothing ever happened until 6 weeks later on Easter Sunday when I almost hemorrhaged. I take it easy for a couple of days, but the fright and horror remains. I've now gone into post-abortion syndrome, but not really. I was in it from the moment I walked through those clinic doors. Abortion leaves emotional scars like depression, regret, remorse, guilt, self-hatred, self-destructive tendencies, suicide, nightmares, inability to forgive yourself, flashbacks of the abortion, and many others. These emotional scars have been identified as post-abortion syndrome, or PAS. Most women have a feeling of relief after an abortion, and it's not until many years later, and that can be 5 or 50, when the men and women start acknowledging these feelings. And I think I've experienced all of these scars. I experienced them immediately because I already had some of them from the adoption. I never grieved the loss of my first child, and now I have another loss weighing down on me. I saw and felt the whole procedure, and I remember every detail of that day. The nightmares and flashbacks were just overwhelming. And the sisters that I was living with at the time, they had found the medication that I was using to help clot from the bleeding that was continual. And they said, either you tell mom and dad or we tell mom and dad about the abortion. And so I ended up telling my parents, which of course did not go over too well. And they immediately said, you need to go to confession. And I remember walking into the church and I was shaking. And I went into the confessional. And I think the only thing that I said was I had an abortion. And the priest had told me that I had done the unforgivable. And I left the confessional crying. And I sat in that pew looking at the crucifix and just cried. And I got up and I did not return to the church.
So you share with the priest that you had an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially he says to you, I cannot offer you absolution. You cannot be forgiven.
Yes.
And you walked out of there. Okay. Wow.
And with that, I became suicidal. I did try to go to confession. I went to several different churches and never got the forgiveness.
So several priests told you the same thing.
Yeah, they did. And I felt alone and ashamed and had nothing worth living for.
It's certainly more than understandable that after trying to go to confession several times to several different priests at several different churches and always being told you cannot be forgiven, that you would leave the church over that, lose your faith in the church. Most people, I think, would under those same circumstances. You're trying to return and you can't.
I mean, it really doesn't matter the circumstances of the pregnancy. I mean, when you are pregnant, you have a problem to fix. But to make the decision to have an abortion just creates another problem, and that leads to another and another until your life comes crashing down upon you. I just wanted to die. And my older sister, she had had enough of my self-destructive behavior and took me to a church renewal function. And I believe I'd been away from the church for probably 5 years. And she knew the priest and his family, and she really wanted me to go there. So I did. And I was very moved by the priest there, who was Father Jim Willick. And the topic that night was forgiveness. And I cried the whole time. And my sister said, look, he's over there by himself. You need to go over there and talk to him. And I went over to him and I was just crying. And I whispered to him that I was a murderer. He said, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to picture somebody walking up to you. I want you to picture that person holding something. That's Jesus, and he's holding your baby. I want you to take your baby from him, and I want you to hold your baby to your heart. That was the first time I had ever felt forgiveness from God. Then that priest told me about a new program within the Archdiocese called Project Rachel. So I finally did call and left a message, and I attended the very next retreat.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about the good that Project Rachel, which is a post-abortion healing ministry recognized by the USCTB and here in this Archdiocese of Cincinnati, how it is that that has been helpful to you?
Well, both of my pregnancies were the result of abusive relationships, and Project Rachel has helped me cope with that. It's been helpful having women with that same experience. It's helped me find healing and forgiveness, and not just from God, but from myself. I'm not a bad person. I made a bad decision, and it doesn't need to define who I am.
All right, so let's take a moment to share with everyone how you can learn more about Project Rachel. If you go to www.catholiccincinnati.org/project-rachel, then you will find our Project Rachel page here at the Archdiocese. What would you recommend to someone who has been affected by an abortion?
I would look at the retreats and the support groups. The support groups are over a period of time. The retreats are usually a Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, ending Sunday right around lunchtime. Then you can go from a retreat to a support group or support group to a retreat. They go hand in hand like that.
Okay, so what's the difference between the retreat and the day of reflection then?
Really, anyone can go to the day of reflection. That is for fathers of the child, grandparents of the child, whoever is connected to that child that was aborted. And there is a small prayer service, and nobody really knows if you had the abortion or if you're just there to reflect on it. Right. And then the retreat is a whole weekend, again, confidential. We do try to respect the women's privacy and wanting confidentiality, because most likely they've ever told anyone that they've had an abortion and they need to deal with this on their own before they can openly share it with others.
So when you register for this retreat, you can even see on the website the upcoming dates in 2019 are March 22nd through 24th. It says Dayton, and then on October 25 through 27 in Cincinnati. So you are told the general area so that you know basically how far away it is, but the specific location is not told to the public. That's just one piece of how Project Rachel keeps these things confidential. So no one even knows where these things are held. And then after you register, then you are told where to go, of course. Day of reflection, of course, dates are here as well. November of 2018 and February of 2019.
And then some people might not be ready for any of that, but they just need to talk to somebody. And so there are several women involved with Project Rachel who are willing to do one-on-one meetings, just talking over the telephone, because once you start sharing your story, the healing begins.
Right. So if you call this local helpline, 513-784-0531, you could speak to a post-abortive woman if you just need to speak with someone, or they can refer you to a professional counselor, or they can refer you to a priest who has gone through Project Rachel training, who would be ready and available to either talk to you or for the sacrament of confession, who we know will not turn you away and tell you that you cannot be forgiven. So also on this website, to finish the rest of this, you click on this resources link and it takes you down to the bottom of the page where you can find the brochures that you can print out or some flyers with tear-off tabs. That is a flyer that gives people the number of Project Rachel, and people just rip the number off of it. They're also available in Spanish. Also on these resources, if you're with a parish and you just want people to know about Project Rachel, there's bulletin announcements here. There's also a little bit of information about Cemetery of the Innocent guidelines. What that means is There are some parishes that like to, particularly either in October, Respect Life Month, or maybe January at the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, the church might put up white crosses representing the number of abortions that have been had in a year or whatever time period they're working with. And if a parish does that, we strongly encourage them to also put up a large banner about Project Rachel and gives the phone number. So that any woman affiliated with abortion that drives by those crosses knows that this church also welcomes people to return and get hope and healing from that so they can return to the church.
With regards to the white crosses,
Yes.
for post-abortive women, that is very painful. Some women will not go that pathway again until those crosses are gone. Some of them won't even go to church there with those crosses because it's an obstacle, it's a barrier to not go there. And from my own experience, my children have asked about the crosses, and I always say to them, you need to pray for the men and women carrying those crosses for the rest of their life. I tell them that cross looks so small in the ground and so light, but it is really big and heavy for the many people carrying it around silently. And I think those banners, because if you see the crosses, but then you see hope and healing with those crosses, it's a beautiful sign to say, yeah, you carry that cross, but come on in. There's hope and healing here.
This is what the banner looks like. We have 5 or 6 of these banners in the Respect Life office available for loan that look just like this. So Project Rachel, Hope and Healing After Abortion, has our phone number and has the email address. I think they're like 10 feet by 4 feet. So any parish that wants to borrow one for as long as we have them, we only have 6, you can call the number right there, the Project Rachel page that we've given out, 784-0531, and they can refer you to our office to schedule this banner. Or I can send you this file, and you can print up your own banner. If you're a large parish and you can afford to make your own, that would be terrific as well. And then finally, if you just want to support this ministry, up at the top, there's a donate button, and you can click here and you can donate online directly to Project Rachel. And what that money will do is it'll help provide scholarships for people to attend these retreats or day of reflections, especially retreats, or it can go towards buying more banners to be loaned out. It can even go to parishes and people ask for free flyers at times. It pays for all those sorts of things towards Project Rachel ministry. It is run by volunteers, so that's where your money goes if you're able to donate. Okay, now it doesn't say up here on the website, but another thing that is offered by Project Rachel is the women involved are happy to come to high schools and give a talk to share part of their journey that is appropriate for a high school group to hear. They've been to several high schools in the area, but if you're affiliated with a high school or you're a parent and you want to encourage the women of Project Rachel to share their stories in religion class or something like that, then we'd be happy to do that. Again, you can call that line or you can send an email to projectrachel@catholiccincinnati.org, and you can find these email addresses or our office phone number on this website. Elizabeth, do you have anything else you want to share that we didn't cover that is offered by Project Rachel Ministry for people who are affected by abortion?
Too many women are out there suffering silently, as well as men, from their abortion. And so I do ask, when you pray for the children lost to abortion, please remember to pray for the women, men, parents, and grandparents affected by abortion too.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your story with us today, taking some time with us today, and helping us to understand the journey of post-abortion healing and ministry and how it is that we need to be better equipped to reach out to those who need hope and healing. I thank you for the courage that you have had to share your story with us today and for being a part of this monthly vlog. Have a great day, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.